What's up, guys? Welcome back to the What's True Health podcast. And today I'm joined by Kaylin, and she's going
Hello.
to tell us all about her placement experience and what it was like. Maybe we can learn a few things from her, and it'll just be interesting to see what does it look like actually going into your first placement experience. What are the expectations? What can we learn? So, Kaylin, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone who's watching or listening. My name is Kaylin. I'm in UCID doing physio, and I'm going into my third year. And I just did my first block of placements last year, December, at Campbelltown Hospital. So it was public health.
Awesome, perfect. I can't wait to get into that because I'm really interested how the public side of things, because you can sort of imagine what the private practice would be like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I don't really know too much about the
Mhm.
hospital system. But before we get into that, how did you get into physio? What's your story pretty much?
So I come from a sporting background, so I'm a figure skater and I've done that since I was 3 years old. And basically, just throughout my skating journey, I've always had to go to like physiotherapists to like get my body checked up. And I had like a few fractures before. So I was already pretty familiar with like the physio industry. And I worked really closely with my own physiotherapist who also graduated from UCID. And so that kind of led me down to do physiotherapy. And I always felt like I was stronger with STEM subjects than like humanities or like business. So that's just kind of like how I got into it.
What are the most common injuries in figure skating?
Like honestly, there's like heaps because I like there's a lot of like ACL tears and then there's also just ankle injuries because you'd think that our ankles are really strong, but it's like secured inside this like stiff boot. So our ankles are actually not as stable as people would think. And then there's also like just you take really bad falls. Like people have gone like hip fractures. I've had my I had a L4 L5 fracture. I'm not really sure where on like the vertebrae, but I got that from like hyper extension and like hyper flexibility because I was always bending backward and forward.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
It
it's
looks
not an easy sport.
it looks so elegant when you're watching it, but it sounds pretty tough. Because
Yeah,
I
like there's two
people
sides of it. Like people will look at it and they'll think that it's really elegant, it's really beautiful, but like the other side, it's like pretty dark and tough.
Jeez, okay. I did not know that. Cool. So that's how you got into physio through figure skating. And so first year's done, moving on to the second year. What have you met anyone who's done placement at that point? Have you done maybe your own research? So what were your expectations, thoughts going into it?
Not much about meeting people who have already done placements, just because I didn't really talk to many of the people in the year above, and I wasn't like on SUPS team, which is like the physio society at UCID. So I didn't really talk to many people from the year above, but my friends were just telling me that it's usually pretty chill because they've like talked to some of those people. So I wasn't too afraid going into it, and UCID prepped us pretty well, I'd say, through like the we had like clinical trials kind of like every 2 weeks on a Monday. And so that kind of like simulated what placements was going to be like. And just on my own, I've done other internships before, like back home in Hong Kong. So I did one at a university hospital, and then I did another one just at my own the physio clinic that I usually go to. So I feel like I was already pretty familiar with like how things work and like the questions I should be asking and like what to expect. So I wasn't too nervous about this one, other than the fact that I was going to be graded.
Interesting. So you've had that experience of being an apprentice almost and an
Yeah,
intern.
yeah. So
That's
like
pretty cool.
before, I wasn't so much like a physio assistant. I was more just kind of like helping around the clinic, doing like reception jobs. And it wasn't paid or anything. It was just kind of like for experience to see what it's like. And like I had the connections to get in because it was like my own clinic that I go to. So it was really easy and it was really chill. But it felt very familiar already when I was already at Campbelltown Hospital doing my placements like and I had a really good clinical educator as well. So everything like went really smoothly, I think.
Oh, okay. So it seems like it's been pretty good, like a pretty good transition into it. Has
Yeah.
that been the case with your friends, just the overall perception? Or have has
Mm.
it been mostly chill going into it?
I think it's like I'm not like I think most of my friends had a really good time on placements and it like was very eye-opening for all of us because we were taught like based on the textbook and to see what we've learned in real life and being able to apply the things that we've learned in class was like wow like this is not fake like it's actually real. So then it was very cool to see like some of the pathologies that we were taught in class. But then I think placements in general is very like up and down because it depends on like the clinical educator that you have. And because we are getting graded, I know some people in my cohort didn't do too well. And it just kind of depends on the educator you have. So it's a bit like wishy-washy when it comes to grading and like how people think that you've done. But in general, it's like a very good experience. It's a very good starting point for your career.
But marks wise, it sounds like it really depends on your supervisor.
It's a bit up and down. Like I had a really good one. She was really sweet and she's had experience with fourth years, but not second years. And then I heard some other educators from Campbelltown Hospital in Block A were very, very strict.
Wow, okay. Yeah, because I heard they actually mark you as if you're a graduate rather than a student. I'm not sure how true that is.
I'm not sure, but I think they are supposed to take into account that we are only second years when we did our placements. And so we aren't really expected to know too much yet. I think it's like by the end of like fourth year is when you're expected to like kind of be on your own and doing your
Hmm.
own thing.
That does make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's move on to actually your first day. I don't know if you remember too much of it, but Campbelltown Hospital, what, how did everything go? So you just rocked up and what happened from there?
Yeah, so basically they before I even started, they gave us kind of like a schedule beforehand, and they were like, "So you want to be there by I think it was 8 o'clock for us, and there were luckily there were 6 people at Campbelltown Hospital for Block B, so I was like with a group of friends, which is really great. And we just kind of all they told us to meet like in this specific part of the building, and that was like I think it was like a level below the ward that we were working at. And we all just kind of met up there and somebody like came to pick us up. And we were all just like wearing our physio uniforms with our physio tags. And so with our names on it as well. And then they just kind of picked us up and like brought us to a little room, I think it was. And then that was where we got split off with our individual educators. So we had 6 of us, and then it was split into 3 groups of 2. I was in the orthopedic ward, and then the other 2 groups was one was cardio resp, and then the other one was the RAP team, which is like accelerated rehabilitation program.
So you're in groups of two.
Yeah. Usually, like you'll have like a mate with you, but sometimes you might be unlucky and you just be on your own.
Hmm. Okay. And what kind of duties would you be doing? Because you wouldn't be treating as such.
No. Well, we kind of got into that at the very like towards the end of the placement block where we do a little bit of treatment and a lot of it was clinical reasoning with our educator. So at the very first day, it was just kind of like us shadow like the first 2 days, I think it was just me and my partner like shadowing our educator and just kind of like getting the feel of things and like seeing how she does like how her process is with patients. And then soon after she'd tell us to like maybe lead a social history and like actually chat with the patients. And then after that we started getting our own patients because I think like especially for my educator, she's worked with fourth years but not second years. So I think she kind of was expecting us to not know anything at all. But we were doing pretty well and we were able to like clinical reason with her. And so I think she felt comfortable enough to give us some patients to work with. And so by the end of the 2 weeks, we each had, I think, maybe 3 or 4 patients. And so we kind of do our rounds each day.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And what kind of conditions came up? Was it like in the textbooks?
S- Um, because we were in the orthopedic ward, we got a lot of like neck of femur fractures because a lot of them were also like in the geriatric like demographic. So they often came in like with a fall and then so they had to do surgery and so like orthopedic itself is just about I'm not sure what the term actually means, but it's like something to do with bones. Bones and like muscles. So a lot of them came in with like some sort of fracture, and we're just kind of there to help rehabilitate them and then get them back on their feet, like comfortable enough to either discharge them back home or figure out like a discharge plan and put them through like an accelerated rehab program if they fit for it.
Oh, okay. It sounds straightforward enough.
Yeah.
Did anything go wrong? Did you maybe try something and it didn't work out how you might have thought?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like not so much like the treatment, like the things that I did didn't work out, but it was kind of like you expect a patient to go a certain way, like for this day, and you think that, oh, maybe they can progress, but maybe they regressed actually. So you kind of have to switch up like your plan on the spot or like make up a plan B before you head in to see the patient.
Oh,
And then there
okay.
was like another time where I think, especially in the orthopedic ward, there's a lot of fall patients, and because they're on the older side, they might develop like delirium, which is like a little bit of confusion and like delusion. And so they have this thing called a fall room. And I think there was this one patient who just kind of wasn't in his right mind, and he like had a jam packet with the plastic bag and everything, and he just swallowed it. And he was kind of choking. There was like a code something. And like all the nurses rushed in to like help him.
Oh, wow. So you definitely need that adaptability of like switching things up on the spot.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Cool. And then I guess that just comes with practice and being
Yeah, I
exposed to
think
that sort of.
so. And just kind of like knowing, and like I think because orthopedic ward is pretty simple because it's the because it's mostly MSK, and I find MSK to be pretty simple as well. Like it's not like cardiorespiratory where there's like infections and like secretion. Like there's like a lot. Like you'll learn about it as well because you're in second year, so you're gonna go into cardio resp. There's a lot of pathology. I think that was the worst one I did. So I was really happy I didn't get that for a placement. So in ortho, it's basically like MSK, and most of it is like fractures or like very rarely will you see like a ligament tear because that's not really what they would do in the ward. They would just kind of like have a look at it like the daycare centers and then just send you off.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and that'll be maybe more private practice sort of
Yeah.
like even sprains.
Hmm.
Okay, so the more
We saw,
severe things would
sorry.
be.
Yeah, no, we only saw like two ACL tears, and it was like post like day one post surgery, and we just kind of go down to like the discharge area. Like once they've gone their surgery, they just get sent home. And like most of them are like young kids as well. So then they just given a sheet of like exercises to do or like go refer them to a GP, and then that was it.
Okay, cool. So they didn't need any more one-on-one sessions.
Yeah, like if they fit the criteria, like they're ready to be sent home and they're like sound-minded and they kind of know what they're doing, then it's they get sent home. Because then they need to free up space like in the hospital. Because like basically that's like the biggest issue in public health is like having enough space, like enough hospital beds, because so many people are coming in like with falls and like all these injuries. And it's just like hard to manage all these people at once with limited workers and then also trying to get them sent home as soon as possible when they're safe to be.
It sounds like a very hectic environment.
It is like there's nurses, OTs, like I think we also do I I can't remember what it's called, but it's um like a group of the allied health people, they'll do their rounds with like certain patients that they might be on top priority. So it'd be physios, nurses, OTs, dietitian, like just surgeon, doctor, like they all just gather around the patient and they'll like discuss a discharge plan with the patient and their family.
As in like a bit in a big group.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like they do a couple patients at a time and they'll go into the room and they'll like talk with the patients
Hmm.
and like discuss like how things has been going and like what we want to see you progress in the next few days or something in order to get you to XYZ.
Okay, cool. See, I didn't know that. And how was it stress wise? Because it's how long were you there from 8 till what time?
Um,
Or was it different?
8/8:30, depending on the day, until 4:30. And like I said, my clinical educator was very good. She was very on time and she like knew exactly what we had to do. And she was very good about being punctual for us and saying like, oh, it's 4:30, like on the dot, like you guys are ready. When you're done with this, like you're ready, you can go. Or she'd let us off a couple days. For a couple days, she'd let us off early. But I know some of the other clinical educators, like I think they had them stay until 5:30.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. And it's tough because like not all of us have cars, and it's like a box that you have to check or you can check on like the placements form to say like whether you have a car or not. And I think I don't know if, whether that makes it more likely that you get put in a rural placement, but it's yeah, like it they'll usually try to put you um in a place, what do you call it? Like put you on a placement that's within 2 hours transport for you. I don't know whether that means like
Hmm.
transportation or car.
Yeah,
So
I did hear
like
something about that.
yeah.
But the way you're describing it, it doesn't seem like it's a intense, like very stressful 2 weeks.
No, this
Okay.
first one is meant to be very chill because they're not expecting you. And like our coordinators have said so many times that they're not expecting you to actually see patients on your own, even though we did get like given that task. And like I think my educator just kind of asked us to like kind of asked us for permission if we feel comfortable seeing patients on our own, but we're not actually expected to do that. It's really just mostly for getting experience, like knowing your way around the ward, just trying to see like how a real life physiotherapist works, whether it's private or public. And then the most that they kind of expect you to do is take social history.
Oh, interesting. So, okay, so it's so much more chill than I thought it was going to be.
Hmm.
And then I'm assuming as you go, it would get more and more difficult.
Yeah, I think so. Like I think afterwards you're gonna get more and more responsibilities. I don't know what they might be yet because I haven't done them yet. I'll have two 5-week block placements this winter. So it's mid
Hmm.
of July to September.
Okay, well, good luck with those. Yeah, but okay, it sounds like they're easing you into it, which is a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
thing. And then you mentioned the simulations, I think, before
Yeah, 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 yeah,
with
yeah.
the actors. Was did that help a lot? I would assume so.
I think that really did, but it was kind of in a weird setting because, when you see a patient in real life, it's one-on-one, but in
Mhm.
simulation, given that they're trying to like teach a big group of kids, like you kind of have to do the one-on-one setting in front of people like watching you in a circle.
Oh, okay, so
But they
there's
do bring in
peer
like,
pressure.
yeah, but they bring in like really good actors who play the role really well, and they'll actually like cough in front of you, and they'll like act like they're really unstable, or they'll be like extra aggressive because some patients can be like a bit more fussy. So they'll like do the spectrum like of different types of patients for you to see and like kind of experience, and they give you really good feedback as well.
Cool. Yeah, so it sounds very streamlined. So first you do the simulations, then you go into a more chill 2 week placement, and then it gets harder and harder. And there was no work you had to do in terms of content. The exams were done, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But not sure about this year, but I'm assuming that they'll do the same. They did give us a workbook, like a UCID placements workbook, and they expect you to do it, but some of the educators didn't even know that it existed. So it kind of, again, depends on your educator.
Hmm. Okay. That's a theme that keeps reoccurring. It depends a lot. Your experience will depend a lot on
Yeah.
your
I've heard
supervisor.
from some people that their educators didn't even know that they had to be graded, like they had to
Oh,
grade the
wow.
student, and then some of them really piled on a lot of work. So it like kind of prepare yourself for the worst, but yeah,
Interesting. Okay. So it is a bit of a lottery.
yeah.
Okay, cool. If you had any tips for maybe people like me, second years, maybe going to start their placement soon, what would you have done differently? Or what advice would you give? How would you approach it differently? It seems like you had a good time, but if you had to repeat it, what might you have done differently?
Okay. Um, I think preparation wise, because you're fresh out of exams, most of the knowledge is still in your brain. So I feel like you don't have to be too worried about having to catch up on content or like read up on extra notes or anything. As long as you kind of like get the gist of it and have some sort of clinical reasoning skills like you would in class, like that is the base standard. And then anything above that is just kind of like, oh wow, like you've impressed your clinical educator. At least that was the case for me. I know some other people kind of got quizzed and they were a little bit like stuck on the spot.
Oh,
Um, but other than that, like content wise, I say you really don't need to do too much beforehand. Um, but the worst thing was about placements is I got to see the 9 to 5-ness of it. And that honestly really scared me because it's like say because I live at Green Square, so having to drive from Green Square to Campbelltown was not like it wasn't that quick. Like I had to take tolls, which is also annoying, and then had to pay for parking as well sometimes. I even got a parking ticket. And then like they don't give you free parking either, even though you're working at the hospital and you don't get paid working there, so it's a little bit like free labor. So yeah, like I have to trek all the way to and back from Campbelltown Hospital. And then once you get back home, you're just kind of like sitting ducks and you're like waiting until you have to go to sleep to wake up early the next morning and do the same thing over and over again. It just felt like I had no life during those 2 weeks. And I was just kind of every time I got home, just like what do I do now? Like I'm just waiting until I have to go to work again the next day. So
so
then
there
I'd
wasn't much
say,
free time.
sorry.
So there wasn't much free time.
Like there was, but it was like meaningless because I would get home around because I finished 4:30. So with traffic and everything, I'd get home around like 5:30. By that time, it was like almost time for me to like cook or make and like eat dinner. By the time dinner's done, shower, get ready for bed, and then you like just go to sleep. And then you wake up early at like 6 a.m. and then you drive to Campbelltown Hospital and do the same thing again. So it's
Mm,
like if I had known that, I would have like better prepared my life. Like try
yeah.
to like, somehow fit in a gym session because I try to go to the gym 3 times a week. And with that schedule, I was like, how am I going to go? I'm going to be so exhausted because I'm on my feet every single day for 8 hours, something like that. And then I get home, I'm tired. Like I don't have the energy to go to gym. I'm just waiting until I have to go to work again the next day.
It doesn't sound like a sustainable way of living. So if that was your actual job, would you think you'd find it quite stressful to
I
manage it?
think I would drop out.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So it's more about just the hours and the driving and the distance.
Yeah, like I think if you get placed in a again like it's like a bit of a lottery and you kind of have to like pray and hope that luck is on your side to get like a placement that's close to where you live. But I got one that's like all the way at Campbelltown, so it was a bit tough. But obviously, like if you live in the area and you like drive down 5 minutes and it's already the hospital, that makes it so much easier.
Do you know anyone who's had that experience of
Yeah,
racing?
like some of my friends are out west, like in Fairfield, and I know she got placed at Westmead, which was pretty good.
That's not bad.
Yeah, and my boyfriend lives at Rhodes, and then he got placed like a 20-minute walk from where he lives.
Oh, perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
so it really does depend.
Yeah, it really depends a lot.
Interesting. Okay, cool. Well, at least it's 2 weeks. Yeah, I would be curious to hear how the 5 week placement goes because that is a long time. S-
Yeah. Especially like if on the 5-week placement you get placed in a rural block, then I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
Like one of my friends got placed in Central Coast, and she lives like in the city.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah, it really does depend. Like I would have thought they make it as close as possible, but I
Yeah,
guess
like I think I'm sure in every single cohort, the students demand for placements that are close to home, and like some of us, like a lot of us are international students, right? So we don't have cars. Like I'm very fortunate enough to have already been converted to like a resident already, and my parents got an apartment for me and like a car so that it's easier also for them when they come and visit me. And so I have access to that, and which makes it easier for me to drive a little bit further than some of my friends who don't have cars or don't have a license. But like I feel like with the use of coordinators, it's almost they say that they will do their best, but it's almost like they don't care and they'll just put you there anyway.
Mm.
It's just like it's just how I feel with the things, but the way that they've operated.
Mhm. Fair enough. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be too happy driving if I was placed in the Central Coast.
Yeah, no. And that I
And
don't think that even is even considered as rural.
oh, it's not.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, okay. Do you know if it's you have to do a mandatory rural placement?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. That'll be
Pretty
interesting
sure
to
that
see.
they'll put you in a mandatory like placement walk.
Hmm. Okay, let's move on to the actual hospital setting because you haven't worked in a hospital before, right? You didn't do any when you because before it was in a clinic, right?
No, I did do a university hospital, which is like
Okay.
semi-private, semi-public. And that one was specifically I remember it was a neuro ward. So
Okay.
they had a lot of stroke patients, and I think that specific hospital is very well known for their advancements in like treating stroke patients. So I kind of already had a little bit of experience going into that, and but that was done in Hong Kong. So I feel like the Chinese like physiotherapy methods versus the Australian physiotherapy methods is like very different.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you've had a little bit of experience in both public and private.
Mm.
What would you say the key differences and well, has it shaped your career path possibly after doing both of these experiences?
Okay. In private, depending on the kind of private clinic that you go to, it also varies a lot. So I've been to some that are purely just like manual therapy and like they use machines to help you and it just like provides temporary relief and that's it. And then I've been to the one that I interned at, um, almost every single one of the employees graduated from Australia and so they're very rehabilitation based. So they'll do like maybe like a 45-minute session, 15 minutes of actual manual therapy and 30 minutes of like rehabilitation. And so in that clinic, everybody was very welcoming. Everybody's very chill. Like literally the physiotherapists, they work in socks and they like eat lunch as they're like working with the patients. Like they're very chill about it. Um and like everybody was just like friends with each other. So it was really great to work in that kind of environment. And they also do tutorials. Um I'm not sure how they managed to like do it, but like every week they'll have one or two tutorials either on like ACL or like something else that's like really that you see a lot in physiotherapy. And then in the hospital, they do still do tutorials, I think. Some of them could be on um the computer database that they use where all the patients are in because we had to do that as well to just like navigate and like know how to use the apps. And then biggest difference I'd say is hospital is way more hectic because in private it's like a structured schedule. Like you have 45 minutes with this patient and then you're done. Whereas hospital, you kind of set your own schedule and you decide on the priority of the patients. So say like there's one patient that's ready to be discharged or like a day away from being discharged, and they should be like top priority because you want to get them as good as possible, make sure that they're ready to be discharged, like nothing, no funny business, and then they'll be out the next day. And like you have a list of patients to go through every week, but you just choose who do you want to see that day, kind of.
Oh, so you don't have to see everyone.
No, no, no. So what we did was, um, my clinical educator was in charge of, say, this part of the ward, and so she gave us a list of the patients on that part of the ward, and she'd highlight a few for us to see, and then that was it. Like we don't
Oh,
see every single patient every day.
hmm. And what was the average amount of patients you saw per day?
Max four, usually th three,
Okay,
I
that's
think
not
I'd
bad.
say something like that.
Cool, okay. Yeah, so that's much more manageable and you can spend your time with
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
patient.
yeah. But I think that was just because we were students, so we weren't given too much. I'm not sure how it actually would work for my clinical educator if she didn't have like students trailing her
Mm-hmm.
for into every single patient. But the thing is, like with hospital, you plan to do a certain thing for a certain time with a patient, but it almost never goes your way. And it'll like either go over, it'll probably like go over the time that you expected it to be. So then you end up having less time and then it cuts into your lunchtime and then like you have to go and then like after you have a 30-minute lunch break or less and then you go back into the ward and you do the same thing until like you have to leave.
So there's that extra dimension with the public system of it's like sort of time management and planning what you're going to do, prioritizing.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And then
So,
you also have to like think about going into other wards because sometimes like patients will move around and like maybe we'll have like a pregnancy patient and she needs to do um like some I'm not sure, but like just some like I know postpartum like they'll give you some exercises to do. So we had to like run around to different sort of wards and the hospital is huge, right? So then we have to factor in time to like walk there as well.
geez. Okay. So you have to go. So you're not just restrained to your ward. You have to go to
Yeah, yeah. Like
different
they could be
places.
just some patients that somehow fall under my clinical educators like list, but they're in a
Mhm.
different ward, but they're under like the same category kind of, and then we just have to like trek over there.
You're right. You're right when you described it as way more hectic and
Yeah,
busy.
for sure. And it like really just cuts in like I feel like you get no life because and I feel like again it's like not for everybody. Like my clinical educator said, like she says specifically she's like such a hospital girly and she really likes working in the hospital, but it's not for everyone because of how hectic it can be. And just like do like you have to be very good at multitasking, I think, specifically in a hospital setting.
Hmm. So would you say it's more difficult to work in the hospital?
Like difficult in a different sense, I think, because private and public, they have their pros and cons. I say private, you probably earn more. Public, you do more or you like or you're a bit more crazed and then you get paid less. Again, like the healthcare system, like all that politics stuff. Um, it just kind of depends on like what you prefer. And I think some people do really thrive really well in a hospital setting. So it really is down to the individual themselves.
Hmm.
I personally think I would do better in private.
Hmm. Fair enough. Cool. So that we went a lot into your story and your placement experience. Do you mind sharing maybe some other stories of your friends or other people you know? How was their experience like? Was it around this? Is it the same sort of thing, or were there any crazy stories?
Um, I think when you're working in a ward, it's a bit more hectic versus say if you were doing in a rehabilitation center, because I know some people got placed in like the rehab area of a hospital or clinic, and it's very quiet every single day. Like it's just doing sit to stands or like arm movements, like very basic rehabilitation stuff. So it was very boring for them and it was less chaotic. Um, I know my boyfriend, he was working at can't remember where, but it was close to Rhodes, and they were very chill about having students there. And the hospital themselves, they were like all very hardworking people, but they literally would have like a Christmas market, and then they'd have like people bring in like a bunch of food, and then during like meetings, they'd all just like snack on donuts and chips and like burgers. It was like very like it is a very wide spectrum depending on where you go to.
Hmm. So I'm noticing there's such a big difference between the different settings of where physios
Yeah.
can work.
It's very versatile, I think, like the industry. So you can, if you're not very sure about where you want to go, I'm sure there's bound to be something for you. Like you can either go into a more hectic path, like for public health and like working in a ward and you're like running around every single day, or you can like stick to something more simple like neuro, which is very, very repetitive, and you'll learn about it as well when you go into second year. Stroke patients usually, I wouldn't say it's easy to manage, but it kind of like follows a plan. Like you work on this first and then you try to do this, and you progress into that. Like it's very structured.
Mhm. Where I think Musk is a little bit more, I guess it has that structure, but then people can display different types of
Mm.
symptoms that might not match.
Yeah,
Okay. And then with cardiorespiratory, how would you summarize that?
I hate it.
Yeah, yeah.
I hate it. It's really bad. That was the worst subject I did last semester. I honestly just didn't get anything in it. It was like it made sense because so in cardiorespiratory, like you get like lung diseases and stuff, and mainly the physio's purpose when it comes to cardiorest is kind of teaching them how to get some of the mucus out because with lung diseases, like, you might get a lot of mucus, right? You teach them how to cough properly, how to like get the gunk out, and then teach them like some breathing techniques and like put them in positions to help them clear out those secretions. I don't know, like that's just not it for me, I think. And you're around patients who are actually sick. Like they're not like they don't have a broken bone or anything. Like that's because like when they're sick, that gets transmittable. Is that how you say it? Transmittable. So I don't think that's for me. And I just think I'll just get really like icked out.
So cardiorespiratory is more the so it's less exercise, is that right?
Um, Exercise in terms of breathing, if you count that. So we'll
Okay.
give them like breathing exercises to help them either teach them how to like get more air in their lungs because they're like having a shallow breath, or teach them how to like cough properly because sometimes people aren't coughing hard enough and so they can't get the mucus out. It's really
Mhm.
like basic stuff like that.
Because I'm imagining getting people to like I don't know, go for a small jog around the ward or something like that to build up their capacity. Is that a component of it, or is it more those breathing
Yeah.
exercises?
Yeah. So that is also another exercise that you could do in cardio rest, which is called we just call it mobilization, just getting them moving around. And generally, like I'm sure like when you're sick, and if you've had the chance to, like when you're sick and you go to like the gym or like you do some sort of exercising, like it makes it easier for you to breathe or like clear something out.
Mm.
So that's like something that we can get them to do as well. But it's not so much like strength training. It's just kind of getting them back into base level. Because like
Hmm.
our base level is like, oh, we can breathe easily, we don't have any mucus. When it comes to cardio rest, it's we're just kind of getting them back to us, like our
Yeah.
like human normal level.
Hmm. Cool. I like that summary between neuro, musc, and cardiopulmonary. That's cool. Okay, I guess we'll wrap it up now. Do you have any final words of advice? Any final things you want to say about placement? Anything you want to express?
Placement, I think everybody should be excited about going into it because I think when you're in your second year, like you've done pretty much 2 years of content already, and you're kind of like, geez, like when am I actually gonna do something? So should be excited that when you're heading into placements, it's not gonna be easy. Like it's not gonna be like just a walk in the park, but you should expect to see things that you've learned about in the textbook, and that should be like kind of, and sometimes you see something really, really crazy like out of the blue, and you it's kind of jaw-dropping that you're seeing that in person. Um, Content wise and like going through the year, like second year onward, just make sure you're like on top of your stuff because they just keep piling on. And I have a lot of friends who just kind of leave it to last minute. And it works for them, but that personally doesn't work for me. So I try to keep up with every single lecture every week and try to get just a little bit of studying in or like try to review my notes throughout the week so that I'm not lagging behind. That's like the main, I know probably everybody says that, but that's like my main tip if you want to like get through physio somewhat easier.
Stay on top of the content.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. And just before we go, if people want to find out more about you, do you have any socials you might want to plug?
Um, I'm mostly active on Instagram. My social tag is k.kahlen, K.Kahlen. I post a lot about just like my life, and I love making content. It's kind of like my side hustle. So I do like lifestyle vlogs, and I really want to branch into like the fashion industry, so we'll see how it goes. But you can find me on there.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kaylin, for joining me today. I learned so much about placements.
No
So,
worries. Thank you for the
yeah,
opportunity.